कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरदारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरदारी यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपादा शिल प्रभुपादा जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस पदच्च सूत सदस्य श्रीमती श्री भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक जय शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस पदच्च सूत सदस्य श्रीमती शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद लखोर किशोरदास भट्ट महाराज की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद शिल भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बोध महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाशी जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री मायापुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। अमन माई की जय। भक्ति देव की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वंदे की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन पद्म गुरु वंदे की जय। समावेद भक्त वंदे की जय। गौर परिमंद हरे हरे। All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to Shikura and Shikara. All glories to the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamati Hare Nashtaprayeshu Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtihi. Hare Krishna, welcome you all to the morning Srimad Bhagavatam summary study. We are discussing today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, text number 1 to 17. Umakyanati Mirantas Jnananjani Salakya Chakshutmaitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Moham Karvati Vachalam Bhangam Nakaide Gilmittu Padma Deshi Guram Dentarna Paramhanta Madam Shri Chaitanya Vesha. Hare Krishna. So today we are beginning a new chapter entitled Lord Rishabhadeva's teachings. So we see that Rishabhadeva was Shaktiyavesha was Avatara, and he had 100 sons, and he gave instructions to them before going to the forest for self-realization. So this particular chapter stresses on the importance of the human form of life, the transmigration in different species of life, and with some focus on bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, and so forth. So there are many important slokas in this chapter which Srila Prabhupada always quotes in his classes. So some of the important slokas I will try and quote in the class. Text number 1. Rishabhuvacha Nayam Deho Deha Bhajamriloke Kashtan Kaman Arhate Vidpujam Ye Tapo Divyam Putrakayena Sattvam Shudyet Yasmat Brahma Shaukyam Tva Anantam. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Rishabhadeva told his sons, "My dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever." So this is also one important sloka that Srila Prabhupada always quotes in his classes. So here, the purpose of human form of life is given, is stressed on. So human form of life is attained very rarely after going through a lot of struggle through so many species of life, some 84 lakh species of life. And generally, people tend to work very hard throughout the day. They it is said that animals also have a lot of sufferings and human beings also have a lot of suffering, but human beings should understand that there is suffering in this human form of in this with any form of life in this material world. So Srila Prabhupada quotes that even animals like dogs and hogs, they enjoy sense gratification by eating stool. So, and after all these, going through all these pieces of life, where in which eating, mating, defending, and sleeping is very, very common, one comes to the human form of life. So, human life form of life is meant to do two things, that is austerities and penances. That is the purpose of this human form of life. And every species of life, whether it is human form or animals or birds, they all try to attain one thing, that is happiness in life. And to the other species, happiness is attained by eating, mating, defending, and sleeping. This is common to human also. But a human being can understand that that is not all in all. In fact, that is too insignificant happiness. And Srila Prabhupada quotes how uh, people, even during his days, he quotes in his purport that people get up early in the morning and then they drive down to the city through train or bus. They travel for 2 hours, go to work. The work those days also were not just about 6 hours or 8 hours. Those who used to work in private company, they used to work for 10 hours and 12 hours, and which goes on even today. In fact, it is much more worse today because people go have night shifts and day shifts, and all these things was never there those days. So there is a lot of change in the pattern of living. So even one, if he thought that he can live, get some happiness by eating or mating or depending on sleeping, that is also gone because people eat at odd times, sleep at odd times, and come home at odd times. And then, of course, s- still worse is when man and woman both work together, go and work outside. Things have got much more complicated, and with children being handled by so many hostels and so forth. So there's no need to discuss further on that. But see, Rishabh, they were here. He emphasized on the need for tapasya, austerities and penances. So by tapasya, one can get out of these material clutches. It is not that by getting one material opulence, one has already attained happiness. Happiness doesn't come from just material opulence, but devotional service is such that it can give happiness that is eternal and it remains forever. Now, irrespective of whoever it is, whatever position they attain in the material world, whether in terms of education, whether it is in terms of career, whether it is in terms of business, that success which gives one position, prestige, wealth, etc., materially is gone with the end of this life. We in the human form of life, at least we can understand that we have not come with any of these things. And when we leave the body, all these things have also got to be left behind. The next birth, we may not be getting the same position, we may not be getting the same prestige, we may not be getting the same power, we may not get the same wealth also. And Srila Prabhupada also has given a quote in one of the classes where how one of the Indian prime ministers, he got educated in UK, uh, and then his next life he had to take birth as a dog in Sweden or Switzerland somewhere. We'll not dwell on that. The point is that whatever material opulence that we accumulate in this birth, it is finished with this birth. But one thing is that whatever devotional service one does in this human form of life, that is carried eternally. And the next birth, hopefully, if those who have not completed in this lifetime, in the next life, it gets carried from wherever we have left. For example, if we have left devotional service in the previous life at 40%, devotional service in the next life starts at 41 and goes on until we complete 100% and go back to the spiritual world. But that doesn't happen in the case of material opulence. We may be poor, we may be rich, we don't know. We may be qualified, we may be unqualified, that also we don't know. So human form of his life is meant for undertaking this tapasya, that is austerity and penance. And by performing this austerity and penance, one can get out of this material clutches, and that is by practicing Krishna consciousness and practicing bhakti yoga. We go to the another important point that is mentioned here. Okay, we'll come to the next sloka. Once again, text number 2. This is also an important sloka. Mahad sevantvaramahur vimuktes tamotvaram yoshitam sangi sangam mahantaste samachitta prashanta vimanyavah suhrita sadhavo ye. Translation, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. So this is also a very important sutta where a lot of important points are stressed. Now here, we start with the human form of body, which is like a junction. In this human form of life, one can take many paths. Now, one path is that those who are attached to sense gratification, particularly to women, and the others who are attached to getting impersonal form of the Lord, attaining impersonal form of the Lord, and those who want to practice devotional service. Now, the goal is different, but the process is also different. But the ultimate goal is that everyone wants eternal happiness. Now, happiness in terms of material sense gratification is different from happiness that is attained from impersonalism or also eternal blissful life. We'll understand a little bit of this. Now, Srila Prabhupada quotes about the quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the translation says that to remain unattached to the modes of material nature, one should avoid associating with those who are asat, that is materialistic. There are two kinds of materialists. One is attached to women and sense gratification, and the other is simply a non-devotee. So on the positive side is association with Mahatmas, and the negative side is the association of non-devotees and woman hunters. So for a materialistic person, there are two kinds of association. One is those who are asat, that is materialistic. And the other one are the ones who are attached to women and sense gratification, which is much more deeper in gravity. One should not develop attachment to those who are attached to women and sense gratification. And on the other side, there is one type of association, that is association with Mahatmas, which is what is recommended in the Shastras. Now, every living entity has got some or other anarthas by nature. we have developed in so many species of life. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives an analogy that uh, where in a wedding party, they go from one side of the shore of the river to the other side. They oar the boat throughout the night, but then in the morning when they wake up, they see that they're in the same place because the boat has been tied with an anchor to an anchor. Similarly, what happens in the human form of life is that many times we have the anarthas, but then one can get rid of these anarthas by association with Mahatmas. So if one develops a taste for the association with Mahatmas and starts applying the instructions, or we take guidance from Guru and to apply our instructions, then if we don't apply, Guru will give instructions, Mahatmas also give instructions, but we don't apply them. It is something like a boat that is tied to the shore with an anchor. We may row through the boat throughout so many lifetimes, but we may not become free of the anarthas. So this is where these are different types of association that one can get. But the most important is association with Mahatas who are freed from the three modes of material nature. Therefore, the conclusion is that one should avoid association with asat sangha tyaga. Is it? We must avoid association with those who are materialistic by nature. Then we come to text number 3. We also should avoid association with those who develop taste for impersonalist Brahman. We'll come to that in a little bit later. Text number 3. I'll read the translation. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. So here there are a lot of important points. We'll understand each one of them. So whether one is an impersonalist or a devotee or one who is interested in advancing spiritually should not mingle with those who are simply interested in maintaining the body by means of so-called material advancement of civilization. Actually, and those who are really interested in spiritual life, there are some points which I mentioned. One should not become attached to homely comforts in the company of wife, children, friends, and so forth. So even if one is a grihastha and wants to earn his livelihood, he should be satisfied by collecting only enough to maintain the body and soul together. Srila Prabhupada emphasizes on this point in so many classes. We all think that by working hard, we get a lot of money, and by having a lot of money, we become free from the misery. But no, that's not the case. There are many who have had a lot of accumulation of wealth, but then it has not led them to any happiness. But at the same time, those who are satisfied in devotional service, even if they don't have much wealth, they are happy. And there are many quotes in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavatam which states that one who has devotion to the service of the Supreme Lord, he is the richest person, even if he doesn't have any material opulence. But at the same time, if one has a lot of material opulence but does not have devotion to the Lord, he is the most poorest person. From this, we must understand we must work only to the extent that we can get enough money to maintain our body and soul together. One should not have more than that, and one should not have less than that also, because if you are short of basic necessities like food, housing, and shelter, then it is very difficult to sustain. So one requires all these things. So a householder should lead a life in such a way that he gets opportunity to hear and chant. He should also worship the deities at home, observe festivals, invite friends, and so on. So these are 6 qualities that a grihastha should adopt to progress in Krishna consciousness. I'll repeat these again. They should not do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders. Then they are also not attached to wives, children's, friends, or wealth. They engage in them in Krishna consciousness. At the same time, the fifth point is that they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. That means one may be situated in a grihastha ashrama, they may be working outside. At the same time, they don't neglect their basic duties that are required to be done in their ashrama. Everyone has an ashrama and they are supposed to be performing their duties. And some examples that are given here. It's not given here, but the reference is there. Swayambhu Manu, it is said that he was a great grihastha and he was also a devotee. He was a king and he was he had a lot of opulence, but he was not dragged down due to his material opulence. He got his daughter married to Devahuti, which we all know, which we discussed in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was a Rajarshi, he was a saintly king, and he enjoyed happiness in a Krishna consciousness atmosphere. He had access to a lot of wealth, women, but being a devotee, he was self-controlled and he had an atmosphere, a spiritual atmosphere, both at home and in the kingdom. It is said that during his reign, the whole family would get up with musicians singing the glories of the Lord while waking up. At the same time, while going to bed also, they would go to bed hearing the glories of the Lord with musicians. Of course, he was a king, so they used to have a lot of musicians in the palace. And the Prabhupada mentioned this was a practice that was prevalent in the previous years also. Not only that, the kings and the others, they used to get up early in the morning and they used to go to the temple by walk and see the morning Mangalarti in the temple. So that is what is more very, very important. This is one such example. The sixth quality is that people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. That means those who want to practice self-realization, particularly grihasthas, they should collect enough money to keep the body and soul together. So a grihastha should lead a life in such a way that he gets full opportunity to hear and chant, practice deity worship at home, observe festivals, and invite friends and give them prasada. And a grihastha should not earn money for sense gratification. That is very, very stressed. Now, uh, grihasthas are not irresponsible. Like one example was Swayambhu Manu. Similarly, another example was like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. He wanted to go, leave home and go, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, you stay at home, take care of your parents, practice bhakti instead of renouncing your parents. So this is how even a spiritual master gives instructions to grihasthas when they take initiation. So bhakti can be practiced at home. Also, it is not that one need to leave his home and go. It can be practiced in the association of family members. Text number 4, which is also an important sloka, which I will recite. नूनं प्रमत्तः कुरुते विकर्म यत् इन्द्रिय प्रीतय आप्नोति न साधु मन्ये यत आत्मनोऽयम् असन अपि क्लेशत आसदेहः. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it is not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. So, some very important points are there in this purport also. So, some people, some even leaders, they propagate that begging, borrowing, and stealing can be, one should beg, borrow. There is a common phrase, beg, borrow, or steal, to live for sense gratification. That is what is condemned in this verse. Such type of living leads one to perform illicit, sinful activities like illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication, by which one gets a material body. So we all have had a material body before. We have performed sinful activities, and we have to suffer those sinful reactions. We have got another material body in this life. So it is not our constitutional position to be in this material world, but because we want to enjoy material senses, we have been put in this material world. Many times we see that those who are working in government offices and even private places, people take bribes. These are all various types of illicit measures. And then they may invest these in shares, bonds, and which are speculative in nature. So all these types of illicit activities, the suffering starts because we have a material body. We have done something in the past life, and the reactions we are already taking in this life. At least from this life, we should try to ensure that we don't develop further karma. So human form of life is to understand that from this life onwards, we have a karma which we build up body after body. And because we have a material body, we are bound to perform sinful activities for which we are bound to get sinful reactions. So one should not, the conclusion of this sloka is that one should not run after sense gratification. It is only because of our desire to enjoy our senses we commit sinful activities. And because of sinful activities, we get sinful reactions. And because we have to get the sinful reaction, we get material bodies also. Text number 5. I'll read the translation. As long as one does not inquire into the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance, be it sinful or pious. Karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called karmatmaka, colored with fruitive activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activities, he has to accept a material body. So here, the means for accepting a material body is mentioned here, and how karma affects people. Now, generally, people think, a common man today thinks that if I perform some pious activity, that is enough for me to make myself free from miseries. That it is not so. Pious activities result in pious results. Impious activities results in impious results. And speculative activities always lead to disaster. So, to become free from all these activities, one should perform his activities in dovetailing these in devotional service. Now, many times from this year, this sloka onwards, there is a little bit of emphasis on jnana mishra bhakti. That means bhakti that is mixed with a bit of speculative knowledge. Now, speculative knowledge can lead one to impersonalism. And by means of impersonalism, one may enter the Brahma Jyoti. But what happens in Brahma Jyoti is that those who believe in impersonation, believe that Lord does not have a name, Lord does not have a form. And when they enter this Brahma Jyoti, they say we want to merge into the light. There is nothing like light of Brahma. This Brahma Jyoti is a glaring effulgence covering the body of the Lord. And these impersonalists, what happens is when they enter the Brahma Jyoti, they remain without an activity. The constitutional position of a soul is to engage in the service of the Lord. But when they enter the Brahma Jyoti, this Brahma Jyoti is entered mainly by this jnana, that is speculative knowledge. And when they enter, there is no activity there. So just like if a person is shut within the four walls, he becomes mad after some time. So again, he has to come back to the material world. That is why it is always recommended not to involve in speculative knowledge. That is one. Pious activities do not solve the problems of material life also. Srila Prabhupada quotes a sloka from Bhagavad Gita 4.3. Translation is, as a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. So one requires knowledge, but at the same, this knowledge can burn to ashes all the reactions of the material activities. But unless one understands the self and its activities, one has to be considered to be in material bondage. Now, We require a certain amount of knowledge, but that knowledge is not all in all. But by performing devotional service, one can develop knowledge also. But knowledge need not necessarily lead to bhakti. So there are three various processes of coming to bhakti yoga. One is called a step-by-step process, which is called people start performing karma yoga. That is, they mix, do some bhakti with some karma also, expecting some results from the bhakti. Then there are those who perform this jnana mishra bhakti, that is, they perform bhakti with some speculative knowledge. They enter into a brahmajyoti. And those who perform pure bhakti without any speculative or without any karma or without any jnana, they enter the kingdom of Godhead, which is the ultimate. So there is a step-by-step process. One who performs karma yoga for many, many lifetimes may come to the stage of jnana yoga. Then they may perform jnana yoga for many, many lifetimes. Then may come to dhyana yoga for many, many lifetimes. Dhyana yoga is the Ashtanga yoga, which was practiced in Satya Yoga, like a bodily exercise. After performing dhyana yoga for many, many lifetimes, one may come to the stage of bhakti yoga. Ultimately, bhakti is required in all the yogas, whether it is karma, jnana, or dhyana. So Srila Prabhupada recommends that why not take a direct lift process of bhakti yoga where uh, one can practice without any difficulty. And that is, I mean, that is the ultimate. Why go through step by step? One can take the process of bhakti yoga in one lifetime and become free from the material miseries. So karmis also take one body after another. Jnanis, uh, they go to Brahma Jyoti and come back. But the point is that Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmandam Te Jnanavan Patyate Vasudeva Sarmati Mahatma Sudurlabhaga. After many, many births, one comes to understand that surrendering unto Lord Krishna or Vasudeva is everything, and that is surrendering to him is the only process. So karmis, they don't know this. But a devotee who is engaged in devotion service to the Lord, he knows fully what is karma and jnana. Therefore, a pure devotee is not interested in karma or jnana. So, pure bhakti is anyavilashta shunyam jnana karma anavritam. So, real bhakta is untouched by a tinge of karma or jnana. His only purpose is to serve the Lord. So, pious activities also bind us in this material world. One may build schools, hospitals, give charity, and etc. That will give us pious result either in this birth or in the next birth. But the real spiritual activity starts with Shravanam Kirtanam. So this verse also stresses on the importance of jnana. But even for jnana, a tinge of bhakti is required because one should know to whom that jnana lead to. Another important point is that one should not indulge in vikarma. Vikarma is that which is activities which are not permitted, that is, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. So many times when we come to Krishna consciousness, we may not become pure devotees of the Lord. We may have some tinge of karma, we may have some tinge of jnana. But ultimately, if one is determined in practicing bhakti, one can lead to the stage of pure bhakti also. That jnana is not lost, but bhakti develops automatically to, that means bhakti develop, by practice of bhakti, one automatically develops jnana and detachment. It said jnana and vairagya. That means when one practices bhakti, automatically one gets knowledge and also one develops detachment also. So one example that is given is that when a sick, deceased person goes to the hospital for treatment, the doctor may give an antibiotic for immediate treatment, and then he will also give a medicine for curing the disease. So initially, we might have to take some antibiotic. So Gyan is like that. But ultimately, one should take medicines for treating giving a treatment from the grassroots level for which medicines have to be taken. So similarly, Gyan might be required at a certain point of time, but over a period, we should not emphasize on that man. The bhakti should surpass that jnana. Another example that is given is about Ajamila. Ajamila was a very pious person. He had a lot of good qualities, but he fell down from his position. So ultimately, but if a devotee is practicing bhakti, it is possible that he may also fall down, but the Lord gives an assurance that he takes care of his devotee. So even if a devotee falls down, the Lord brings him back. And devotional service is such that it does not get wasted of whatever level they have performed. One example that is given is that when Srila Prabhupada was traveling with his devotees in a car during those days, the car met with an accident. So it was a major accident, and it is said that most of the devotees who were there, they got major injuries. Srila Prabhupada also had some minor injuries. And then it is said that Srila Prabhupada quoted the last verse of this sloka, that is, asan api kleshada asadeha, meaning that material bodies means material miseries. So go to text number 6. I'll read the translation. When the living entity is covered by the mode of ignorance, he does not understand the individual living being and the supreme living being, and his mind is subjugated to fruitive activity. Therefore, until one has love for Lord Vasudeva, who is none other than myself, he is certainly not delivered from having to accept a material body again and again. So our mind is polluted by fruitive activities. We want to perform some activities with expectation of some results. That is what's called a fruitive activity. We expect some fruits of the activity. That's why it's called fruitive activity. So by that, one living entity wants to be elevated from one material position to another. But when one understands even Vedic rituals, he wants to become interested in getting promotion to heavenly planets. But as you all know, promotion to heavenly planets is not all in all the goal of life. One may attain heavenly planets by practicing a lot of ritualistic practices. But ultimately, even if one goes to a heavenly planet, even up to Brahmaloka, one has to take birth, death, go through birth, death, old age, and disease. The degree of living may be higher in higher heavenly planets, but the problems remain the same. So the solution is that one has to come in contact with a devotee of the Lord, which I mentioned as Mahatma, preferably a guru, and uh, until he becomes attached to the service of that guru, uh, one has to remain bound in this material world. So one should search for a guru and through him develop an attachment to the service of Lord Vasudeva. And as I mentioned, the sloka, knowledge of Vasudeva requires many, many births to understand. So after struggling for many, many births, when one comes to know that ultimately surrender to Krishna is the only process, why not surrender to him? So when this happens, then one actually becomes wise. This is the only way to stop the repetition of birth and death. And Sri Prabhupada also mentioned that living entities wander through different planets in different forms and bodies. But if by chance he comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, by the grace of spiritual master, he receives Lord Krishna's shelter and his devotional life begins. That means even by attaining through the higher planets, uh, miseries continue. But if by chance one comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, for which Srila Prabhupada gives a quote from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told to Srila Rupa Goswami, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva. Translation is, a living entity wanders throughout different planets in different forms and bodies. But if by chance somebody comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, then he can get shelter of Krishna, and that is when devotional life starts. Uh, Text number 7. I'll read the translation. Even though one may be very learned and wise, he is mad if he does not understand that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Being forgetful of his own interest, he tries to be happy in this material world, centering his interest around his home, which is based on sexual intercourse, and which brings him all kinds of material miseries. In this way, one is no better than a foolish animal. So, on the lower platform, many human beings also, some may be on the lower platform, they think that the sex indulgence is all in all. In fact, the material existence itself is because the sex attachment of man and woman, and the basic bondage is due to sex. So sense gratification leads to being bound in these three modes of material nature. Uh, Now, from here onwards, this verse starts with about that Bhakti Mishra Gyan. That is, there are two things. One is Jnana Mishra Bhakti, and the other is Bhakti Mishra Gyan. Jnana Mishra Bhakti is 90% of Bhakti with 10% tinge of Jnana, and Bhakti Mishra Gyan is 90% of Bhakti with 10% of Bhakti Mishra Gyan is 90% of Gyan and 10% of Bhakti. So even if one becomes a very learned Pandita, which is mentioned in the purport, if one has not given up sense gratification, so that jnana fails. That's why I mentioned the last sloka also. Even if one has a capacity to recite many verses from Vedas, but still, if he doesn't reach the stage of bhakti, he can also fall down. Ultimately, one has to reach the stage of bhakti, which is the ultimate stage of perfection. Text number 8. I'll read the sloka. पुंसस्त्रिया पितुनि भावमेतं तयोर्मितो हृदय क्रन्तिमाहुः अतोग्रह क्षेत्र सुताप्त पित्तैर्जनस्य मोहोऽयम् aham memeti. Srila Gopal also quotes this sloka very often in his classes. A translation reads, the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attached to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusion and thinks in terms of I and mine. A very important sloka, and the important points are, sex life is what serves as a natural attraction between a man and a woman. This attraction is also there in the lower species of life, but in the human form of life, one should understand that sex life is permitted for procreation, not for sense gratification. Otherwise, if it is indulgent sense gratification, it binds a man and a woman together, and one starts thinking, a wife starts thinking, this is my husband. The woman or the wife starts thinking that this is my husband. And the man thinks that this is my wife. And this is what Srila Prabhupada terms as Hridaya Kranti, or the hard knot in the heart. That means this sex attraction leads to a knot that is very difficult to untie. That's why it's called Hridaya Kranti, the hard knot. So in any case, when a man thinks of a woman and a woman thinks of a man, at the end of the life, if a man thinks of his wife, he takes birth as a woman. And at the end of life, if a woman thinks of her husband, she becomes a man in the next life. That is how a person becomes materially attached then to family. First, it starts with attraction to the opposite sex. Then it extends to attachment to family, property, and children. And all of them are temporary. One's wife is not eternal. One's husband is not eternal. Life after life, it changes. Children are also not eternal. And whatever material opulence I discussed before, property, etc., they are also not eternal. But somehow, because one develops attachment with the opposite sex, then gradually they develop attachment to property, wealth, etc. Sometimes it is said that even after renunciation, Srila Prabhupada mentioned the purport, one becomes attached to a temple or a position. And even it goes to the extent that Srila Prabhupada mentioned that sannyasis can also develop attachment. That is how develop attachment in this material world is so strong, it is not possible to give up very easily. And that is the reason for it is the strongest illusion. So most people are bound by the knots of marital relationship, and consequently, what it leads them to forget their relationships with Krishna. It is said in the Vedic times, women were not allowed to mix freely with men, and that was a good path because uh, because they were restricted from free movement. There was a lot of Vedic values, and there was a lot of respect for the woman. And now what has happened is, with the women also going and working outside, and with the propagation of gender equality, I think a lot of things have got degraded. We see that women also working in the night, and there is every day there is some episode of women being attacked by men, etc. Whereas women are not meant to be going outside and working, particularly late nights and etc. This has happened because the development of attachment from man to woman has led to nuclear family standards. And when nuclear families means the man, as soon as he gets married, he wants to have a separate house, wants to enjoy sense gratification separately. With the result, what has happened is that the guidance that is required to the man and a woman who got married, which was given earlier by elders, that has been lost because they want to enjoy nuclear family. So with the result that the family life has also got degraded. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a quote as to how uh, uh, men are compared to butter and women are compared to fire. And when butter comes in contact with fire, the butter melts. So Srila Prabhupada also gives this quote as well as another quote. He says that a man is good, a woman is good, but when both of them come together, then both become bad. When we go to text number 9, I'll read the translation. When the strong knot in the heart of a person implicated in material life due to the results of past action is slackened, one turns away from his attachment to home, wife, and children. In this way, one gives up the basic principle of illusion, I and mine, and become liberated. Thus, one goes to the transcendental world. So we have a lot of attachment, as I mentioned so far, but if by associating with sadhus and engaging in devotional service, one can become free from this material attachment, and one automatically starts getting knowledge and detachment. This knot of detachment is this is knot of the knot of attachment has to be untied and given way for detachment. So only process that can give this detachment is bhakti. We see example in Mahabharata also. Dridhara was attached to his son until the last moment of point. And even after he lost all his sons, still he stayed in the house of the Pandavas. But then Vidura had to give some strong words to him for him to leave the palace, and that is then when Dhritarashtra left the palace. The point is that attachment to home and wealth is something very difficult to give up. And that is why every sloka Srila Prabhupada emphasizes on the need to practice bhakti, and bhakti is the only thing that can develop knowledge as well as detachment. Text number 10 to 13. A lot of slokas here. I will not read the sloka. I will read the translation. It's a long one. Please bear with me. But a lot of important points are there. Rishabh continues. Oh, my sense, you should accept a highly elevated Paramahamsa, a spiritually advanced spiritual master. In this way, you should place your faith and love in me, the personality of Godhead. So here it's a long, so I will go point by point. He's emphasizing on the need for accepting a elevated Paramahamsa, that is a spiritual master, and one should serve the spiritual master, by which one can develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he says, you should detest sense gratification and tolerate the duality of pleasure and pain. It is said that there are 25 important points, so I'm going through one by one. So the next point is one should detest sense gratification and detest and tolerate the duality of pleasure and pain, which are like seasonal changes of summer and winter. So two important points are there, that one should avoid sense gratification. One should also develop tolerance for pleasure and pain, because generally we see when we have some pleasure, we are happy, and we get some pain, we are unhappy, but we should be able to tolerate that, just like seasonal changes of summer and winter. The next point that is there is try to realize the miserable condition of living entities, which are miserable even in the higher planetary systems. So all the living entities that take material bodies, they all are suffering. But only thing is that the lower species of life cannot understand. But in human form of life, one can easily understand that there is suffering for irrespective of whatever it is. Even on heavenly planets, Indra is always worried about holding on to his position. He's always worried that somebody, if he performs austerities, he will take over his position. So that is how even a life in heavenly planets is also miserable. Then he says, uh, philosophically inquire about the truth. I mean, one should inquire about the philosophically about the absolute truth. Then he says, then undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. So one must perform austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. If austerities and penances are performed for some other purpose, uh, it is of no use. So one must take austerities and penances for devotion. So I mean, it's just like waking up in the early hours of morning, going to Mangalarti, attending temple programs, and taking the time for chanting, hearing, and so forth. These are all austerities and penances for devotional service. The next point he emphasizes give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment and engage in the service of the Lord. So one should give up the endeavor for sense gratification and engage in the service of the Lord. Then he says the next point is listen to the discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always associate with devotees. That means one must associate with devotees of the Lord. Not only that, but they should always discuss Krishna Katha. Many times it also happens when devotees meet, they discuss other things than Krishna Katha. That should be avoided. So he say, Rishabdev emphasis on that, emphasize the importance of discussions on Krishna Katha. Then he says the next important point is chant about and glorify the Supreme Lord and look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. So the point is that one should chant the holy name of the Lord and also attempt to glorify the Lord, chanting and the holy names of the Lord, and also one should glorify the Lord. The important point also is emphasis on look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. All are living entities and all have the same soul within their bodies. So one should look at all of the material bodies as on the spiritual platform. That is, quote from Bhagavad Gita, also Vidyavane Sampanne Brahmane Kaviyavistine. So an intelligent person is one who looks at a brahmana or a cow or an ass on the same platform. The external body may be different, but the soul within the body is the same. In fact, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has given a quote that one should not find fault with any species of life because they are all creations of the Supreme Lord. Then the next point that he emphasizes is give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. That is, one should not have enemies. One should also not develop anger and one should not reach lamentation. That means Brahmabhuta Prasannatma na sochati nashkankshati. One should be situated on the same platform at all point of time. Then he says, abandon identifying the self with the body and the home and practice reading the revealed scriptures. We all tend to identify ourselves with our body and not the spirit soul. And that is why we develop attachment to the body. So here he emphasizes on abandon identifying the self with the body and the home. One should not identify ourselves with our home either. And also one should practice reading the revealed scriptures, like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. The next point he emphasizes is live in a secluded place and practice the process by which you can completely control your life air, mind, and senses. Of course, there's a little bit of yoga, dhyana yoga in this. In this Kali Yuga, it is not possible to go to a secluded place and live, but nevertheless, one should never associate with non-devotees. Asat Sangatyada, which we have discussed. And one should try to control his mind and the senses. Then he says that have full faith in the revealed scriptures, the Vedic literatures, and always observe celibacy. So one must have faith in the scriptures. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, these are literatures given by the Lord himself, and one should have faith in them. And another important point is that one should strictly observe celibacy. Then he says, perform your prescribed duties and avoid unnecessary talks. So two points that are mentioned in this itself is that one should perform his prescribed duty. We all have prescribed duties, whether a man or a woman or a child, everyone has got some prescribed duties. And one should avoid prajalpa. Prajalpa is discussing unnecessary talk, engaging in unnecessary talks, gossiping. So Next point, he says, always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, acquire knowledge from the right source. So one must take knowledge from a bona fide disciplic succession. In our Sampradaya, we say that there are four, as per Padma Purana, there are four Sampradayas, Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, and Kumar Sampradaya. So one must try to acquire knowledge from a bona fide source, because otherwise knowledge becomes diluted. Then he says, thus practicing Bhakti Yoga, you will patiently and enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge, and we will be able to give up false ego. So by practicing all these 25 elements which I have discussed one by one will reach a stage where he is able to practice Bhakti Yoga, and then he will be elevated in knowledge also. And at the end result of all these things is that he will be able to give up false ego. Ultimately, what is binding us in this material world is our false ego. It is our ego which takes us from one body to the another. We must see that we become free from false ego, at least from this lifetime. Some more important points in the purport that is mentioned is that there are many so-called religious institutions which are devoted to various demigods. But good association means association with only those who accept Krishna as their worshipable deity. Uh, then also, sex with one's wife should be can be undertaken according to scriptural injunctions. That is also a brahmachari. That means one who engages in sex activities based on scriptural injunctions is also can be also be termed as brahmacharya or celibacy. But illicit sex is opposed to religious principles, and that is the reason for a block of advancement. Srila Prabhupada also gives a quote by Srila Madhvacharya. And there's a sloka which he has given. I'm not going into the sloka. The translation says, the sum and substance of all the slokas is that Madhvacharya has given his commentary on these four slokas, that is from 13 to 10 to 13, in which the translation he says that one should refrain from acting out of a desire for sense gratification and should instead always engage in the Lord's loving service. In other words, Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate acknowledged path of liberation. The point is that we have discussed whatever slokas we have discussed so far, one should give up the tendency to engage in sense gratification. And Bhakti Yoga is the only process by which one can attain this path of liberation. Then some important point, one should perform activities only for the benefit of the soul. Any other activity should be given up. When a person is situated in this way, he is said to be desireless. That means when one performs activities for the benefit of the soul, he becomes desireless. When it does not mean that a living entity cannot be desireless, but real desire is to be engaged always in the service of the Lord. That is the constitutional position of the soul. That is what is called desirelessness. And spiritual knowledge is jnana vijnana samanvitam. Here there are two important points. One should be, when one is equipped with jnana and vijnana, that is perfect. Jnana means one understands, one gets knowledge. That knowledge is that one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, to be the Supreme Being. And Vijnana is basically wisdom, refers to activities that liberate one from the ignorance of material existence. That means one should have jnana, and also Vijnana is that activities that can liberate one from the material existence. With that jnana, many times what happens is that one may have a knowledge. For example, one might understand, like for example, we have read so many slokas today that prohibit sense gratification. One might have that jnana, but if one is not able to practice it through activity, proper activity, that is what is called vijnana, then that jnana is of no use. So one must have jnana also. At the same time, one must perform activities by which one can perfect. That is what is called vijnana. That will give liberation from material existence. So there are 25 items all in all. there are two things more important. One is called ahankar and the one other thing is mamakar. These are the ones that lead us to fruitive activity. Ahankar is false ego, which we discussed in the previous course also. Ahankar is I am the cause of this. I did this, I did that. And mamakar is this is mine, who can take it? Nobody else. So I and mine is what is keeping us bind due to our false ego. So jnana is knowledge and vijnana is wisdom. So the above steps can give freedom from bondage. Then we go to text number 14. I'll read the translation. As I have advised you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means, you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. So here also a lot of important points are there. Now, the process of liberation is called Brahma Jijnasa. That is called the search for the absolute truth. Now, this search for the absolute truth continues life after life until one becomes situated or fixed in a spiritual path. And when one reaches that stage, then he becomes situated on the Brahmabhuta platform, Brahmabhuta Prasanatman and Sochiti Nakangshati. The point is that all these practices should lead us to Parabhakti, the transcendental devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So Karma Mitra Bhakti, Jnana Bhakti, Dhyana Mitra Bhakti, all should lead us to pure Bhakti. This is called Parabhakti, transcendental devotional service to the Lord. That means devotional service to the Lord also can be performed in lower modes, but one should reach this Parabhakti or transcendental, that is Anya Vilashita Shunyam, that is without expecting anything, unalloyed devotional service and always to be engaged. Anya Vilashtam Jnana Karma Anavatam. That should be bhakti without a tinge of jnana or karma. So there's a mention that if one is actually engaged in devotional service, he should not bother seeking out knowledge, but by engaging in devotional service, undeviatedly, unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service. So Rupa Goswami also mentions how devotional service should be unmotivated and uninterrupted. That means devotional service, when we perform devotional service, we should not have any expectations. By doing this, I will get that. By doing that, I will get this. That should be, that is a motivated devotional service. That's all in the mode of passion. And by performing devotional service undeviatingly without any deviation, one will attain this liberated condition. That is what is called Parabhakti. Then another important point that is mentioned in the purport is about the instructions received from a spiritual master must be followed very, very strongly. One should not deviate from or surpass the instructions of the spiritual master. One should not be simply intent on consulting books, but should simply execute the spiritual master's order. Here, the emphasis is to avoid speculative knowledge. The reason is that many times even devotees read so many books and they, instead of coming to some proper conclusion, they lead to speculative knowledge and they get into a lot of questions and doubts. So whatever Prabhupada has given, that is good enough for us to understand. So one need not have to read too many books, and because we are not situated in that platform as a scholar. There may be many scholars even in the moment, but they are in a position to analyze the scriptures of other books also in reference to Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. But when one identifies, somebody asked me a question about so many other Puranas. So when others, when neophytes read other Puranas, they get confused. So when Srimad Bhagavatam is given, which is the essence of all Vedic literatures, the essence of all the Puranas, there is no need to go and search for knowledge from other scriptures. Also, there is a mention that if one engages in devotional service, one need not have to practice mystic yoga. The point is that One can give up the practice of yoga, but devotional service cannot be given up. So we perform, as I discussed, karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti, dhyana mishra bhakti. So at all point of time when we reach the practice of pure bhakti, karma goes off, jnana has to be given up, uh, and dhyana also has to be given up. So yoga can be given up, but devotional service cannot be given up. That is eternal. Then Srila Prabhupada also gives a quote which says that even those who are liberated must also engage in devotional service. So devotional service is the constitutional position for all living entities. It should never be given up. One may give up the practice of yoga when one is self-realized, but at no stage can one give up devotional service. All other activities for self-realization, including yoga and philosophical speculation, may be given up, but devotional service must be retained at all time. So the point is that all other practices can be given up, but bhakti cannot be given up. Text number 15. I'll read the translation. If one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum and chief aim of life. If he is a father instructing his sons, the spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should also avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, a son or a citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. So, very important points are there. Here in this loka, Rishabdev speaks about those who want to guide others. So far, he has given his instructions, teachings. Now he speaks about from sloka 15 to 18, he speaks about how a teacher of bhakti can, not only he attains his goal, but how he has to give instructions. So some of the things that are mentioned, if a father is instructing his sons, a spiritual master is instructing his disciples, a king may instruct his citizens, he must instruct the way Rishabdeva has advised. Then he also says that if a disciple, son, or a citizen, if they are not able to follow his order, the parent or spiritual master or the king should not get angry. On the other hand, they should be one should try to engage them in devotional service. But at any cost, one should not lead his disciple, a son or citizen, to karmic activities. Or they should avoid leading them to fruitive activity. What is the benefit of that? It is leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in that well. So, Srila Prabhupada gives a quote, let not the wise disrupt the minds of ignorance who are attached to fruitive activity. They should be encouraged not to refrain from work, but to, yeah. So the point that Rishabdeva emphasizes is that there are many who may not follow the instructions, but then one should not get angry. Gradually try to engage them in devotional service. And example is given. For example, some may be interested in many people who come to the movement also come with an interest in stories. So instead of trying to give them some philosophical knowledge, one should try to give them stories from Mahabharata and Ramayana and so forth, by which they may develop some interest in philosophical knowledge. So preaching is also a very sensitive exercise. One should preach in a way that the others don't go out of the moment. So one should be very careful in preaching to whom and what. And it is said that there are three things that are important for these teachers. Mercy of the Supreme Lord as a goal of life. One should not be angry if to whom he is giving instructions, it does not follow. Also, one should not instruct one to a fruitive activity. Another example that is given is somebody is interested in giving charity. They may not take up devotional service straight away, but they can be engaged in the charity for cows, donations, etc. So we should preach in a way that to whom we preach, they don't leave and go. And there is an emphasis on how even a foolish person should be given sympathy. After all, everyone is, most of, including we were also at some point in the mode of ignorance, we didn't know. So like that, we should also have our compassion. At the same time, we should not pamper them that they take things for granted. Text number 16. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to his mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. So there are many materialistic people who don't know what is the real path of self-interest is, and in the process they develop uh, envy. If we see what is the cause of envy, because of temporary sense gratification, one becomes envious of the other uh, due to temporary sense gratification, and this mentality is something that plunges one to deeper suffering. uh, Srila Prabhupada mentions one who is unintelligent, who has no eyes for the future, to see the future, creates enmity and fights with others for sense gratification. As a result, one suffers in the next life, but due to being blind like a blind man, he continues to act in such a way that he suffers unlimitedly. So one should not develop enviousness. Conclusion is that although ignorant, people still go to blind men for leadership. As a result, both are subjected to miserable conditions. The blind lead the blind into the ditch. So many times people might be lost, but still they go to another blind man for guidance. So a blind man can only lead another blind man into a ditch. Text number 17, which is the last sloka for the day. I'll read the translation. If someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, how can one who is actually learned, so I'll repeat again, if someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, how can one who is actually learned, merciful, and advanced in spiritual knowledge engage him in fruitive activity and thus further entangle him in material existence? If a blind man is walking down the wrong path, how can a gentleman allow him to continue on the way to danger? How can he approve this method? No wise or kind man can allow this. So we see here there are two types of personalities. One is in the mode of ignorance. He doesn't know that this material world is a path of darkness, which is what is termed as samsara. And the other type of person is one who is actually learned, merciful, and advanced in spiritual knowledge. So a person who is well versed in knowledge and compassionate and merciful, how can such a person engage the ignorant in fruitive activities and entangle him further in material existence? That means an intelligent person, even though he has got compassion, mercy, and so forth, and sufficient spiritual knowledge, he should not lead others to a fruitive activity and entangle him further. No wise person should allow this. With this, I conclude the class for the day. It had to be extended by a minute. If any of you want to ask any questions or comments, I can take it.
Prabhuji, small clarification,
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji, please.
You alluded to Jnana Mishra Bhakti and Bhakti Mishra Jnana.
Yes.
So Jnana Mishra Bhakti is 90% Jnana and 10% Bhakti, or
No, 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 no. Jnana
okay,
Mashra Bhakti is 90%
90%
Bhakti,
Bhakti.
10% Jnana.
Then what is Bhakti Mishra Jnana?
Bhakti Mishra Jnana, 10% Bhakti, Jnana is more predominant.
Oh, but the name is little confusing. So
I know,
thank
I
you,
know, I know,
Prabhuji.
I know, I know.
Thank
Is
you
it
so
clear now?
much,
Is it
Prabhu.
clear now?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Yes. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments?
Now I understood, Prabhuji. Jnana Mishra is your, it is the
Mixed.
bhakti is more, and
Uh,
bhakti jnana is jnana is more. Thank you.
Jnana
Bhakti Mishra. Okay.
Mishra Bhakti is Bhakti, which is tinged with Jnana.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank you so much.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Bhakti Mishra is okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Anybody else? If not, can I take the class as closed? Sri Hari Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very
Hare
much.
Krishna devotees.
Thank you all very much. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.